lives and the way we do business. What can we do to bend reality? Learn more about the future of augmented reality. See how you can influence what's happening in front of consumers' eyes and use the knowledge to your advantage. Top experts and visionaries will reveal what the future of AR holds. Sit back and discover the 360 degrees of disruption happening all around us.
Well, that was a perfect intro. Nothing left to say other than that magical voice out of the off is probably going to end up making me redundant. Anyhow, at the end of this session, which is called Disruption, is 360. We're going to try and find out, when is AR there? What about VR? And so on. Anyhow, I'm going to not ramble. Don't want to be doing that. However, we have our first speaker lined up. And as always, let's roll the intro and find out who he is. Change is hard and it's inevitable. Now, that's a lovely quote line. Here he is of Facebook. Hello, Padraig Hughes. How are you?
Daniel, lovely to meet you, and thank you for the kind introduction.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to look forward to learn everything on the future of augmented reality in the next 20 minutes. Padraig, the stage is yours. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you very much, Daniel. First of all, delighted to be here today. Let me introduce myself first. Padraig is Irish for Patrick. So I'm the director and site lead for Facebook Reality Labs in Cork. I lead a world-class team of research and hardware engineers who are focused on developing next generation hardware for future AR and virtual reality. First, welcome to my home and my office, and I'm joining you here on our Facebook portal systems. I'm grateful and excited to have the opportunity to talk with you today about Facebook's vision for AR, because we at Facebook believe that AR is generally transformational technology with the potential to change our world on a level not seen only maybe once or twice in a lifetime. So it's imperative to start a broad conversation now about how we as society want to shape this process. I'm genuinely excited here to be here as a fellow entrepreneur. I've spent 12 years in the startup world in my career, where I've led teams in advances in semiconductor detection systems and digital and also light source engines. And these applications are wide-ranging from LiDAR, medical diagnostics, and more recently to displays themselves. I'm very fortunate as well that these companies have had successful stories and have been incorporated into large multinationals. Next slide, please. Okay, we're living in a digital world where immersive human-oriented compute platforms play a huge role. Primarily, the interaction is very visual, mainly through non-interactive 2D display screens, many of which you see here in front of you. But imagine if it could be more than that, and the technology could amplify your senses and memory and cognition to superhuman levels. Enriching user experiences coupled with strong product design is what matters most for people. That virtual world has touched nearly every corner of our lives, but it has one great limitation. We interact with almost exclusively through a two-dimensional windows that bring the virtual world into a real world in a limited way that only uses a small subset of our inherent information processing capabilities. As you can see from these slides, you can see how people are interacting in the 2D space. So, through our senses, we are capable of processing huge amounts of data. However, much of that processing happens below the conscious level. And it's that unconscious processing that gives us a realer sense of reality. Similarly, when we take actions in the real world, we're primary use of our 25 degrees of freedom, mainly our hands, which are capable of providing vastly rich interactions than touching our screen or using a mouse or keyboard. I have to say, I realized this when I first joined Facebook many years back. It was about 4 to 5 years ago. I put on a very early VR prototype. I stood at the top of a virtual cliff and looked over the edge. And instantly I felt my knees lock up. My conscious mind, however, knew that there was no real danger, but that unconscious processing that always forming our model of the world was utterly convinced that I was on the edge. As a result, I had an experience that engaged me in a way that had never happened before. I crossed into the realm where the virtual and real world can both produce genuine, deep, immersive experiences. In sharp contrast to looking at the image of the virtual cliff, which contains 2D information but does not cause anyone's knees to lock up. That was a truly moment in my career, and I knew once I saw that, when I went to FRL research first, I realized we had something here. Okay, so for all the remarkable things that have been enabled by flattening the virtual world to 2D dimensions, our phones and computers do not come close enough to tapping into our brain and perceptual systems' full potential. Next slide. In contrast, by making the virtual world fully three-dimensional, VR and AR lets us access information in ways we've built to work with, mixing real and virtual reality freely, and that will let us learn, connect, collaborate, and problem solve more efficiently. We believe too that virtual reality and augmented reality products are the next technology to enable us to move from the computer age to the phone age to the new smart digital platforms. This requires innovation and development of new technology that does not exist today to support, and that's what my team's job is to realize. So, for this presentation, what is Facebook's role? What will the next generation platform do? What will AR, VR future look like? Let's explore this for the next 5 to 10 minutes. But before I do so, I want to take a step back for a second to talk a little about what Facebook Reality Labs' mission and overview is. I want us to explain as well how it ties into our overall mission. And Facebook's Reality Labs mission is to extend the depth of connection by building the tools to bring people closer together emotionally and by enriching users' overall experience. Our vision is that physical distance nor devices should be used to limit people's being connected anytime, anywhere. Our work centers on building the next computing platforms centered around our hardware products to enable a depth of connection through social presence. Now, what do I mean by social presence? Social presence is that feeling that you're right there in the moment with another person and sharing the same space regardless of physical distance. It's a very important point, and it's a topic that we will talk about a lot within. It's that deep, immersive experience. The FRL organization itself consists of many divisions or product groups, including AR, VR, product, and FRL research. Products include today well-known headsets like Quest, Spark AR, which builds an overlay of software effects to expressions or even shopping online, for example, before purchasing. And my favorite of all, which is the one I'm using here today and how I'm beaming through here, is our portal system, which allows a much more deeper connection with family and friends and work colleagues in a more personal and real way. We also have set a unique set of boundary principles that gives us a compass and boundary for innovation for product design and delivery. And it's very, very important with regards to our product principles. The first principle of which is that we must invent responsibly. What that means is we're building hardware and software that allows us to set clear privacy and functional expectations with everyone exposed to our products. We'll solve real and hard problems. We need to be confident that the problems we're solving really matter to people and that our solutions really help. We'll maximize differentiation. We will focus on problems where our solutions are dramatically better than alternatives, not just slightly better. So we will make compelling technologies that will matter most to people. We'll prioritize, obviously, in terms of the technologies that we will develop, and we'll build the infrastructure that increases our iteration speeds, our architectures will scale, and prioritizing things that are hard to fix later, like performance and security. So we are focused on these today. Okay. The next slide is my team, and a little bit focused on my team in Ireland because it's not very well known, but we have a very strong presence apart from Facebook in Dublin. We have 3 sites in Ireland in total. In Dublin, our data centre in Clonee, and our R&D development site in Cork, part of the FRL group. My team is working on exciting augmented reality technology for our future AR glass products. And specifically, my team is working on advances in display technology in a way that has not been realized before. Okay, so when I spoke about the vision and mission statements previously on previous slides, FRL will help you to better understand why our products and experiences are grouped into what we call 3 key investment areas. The first investment area is home, The second area is VR and AR. Now I will discuss home first, briefly, touch on VR, and then I will discuss AR. But all three investment areas allow for what we describe as this deep social presence, within easy reach to give the highest fidelity afforded by our technology. And this is really what our products are about. It goes back to my previous statement, products matter and style. Okay, so let's talk about home and Portal for a second. The most obvious product representing the home area is our Portal hardware and its accompanying software. Now, you won't be able to see it here, but maybe we go to the Q&A, I can move around and you can see how the auto-focusing, how it moves around and tracks voices, etc. It gives for a much more deeper, family-orientated and richer experience, which is no more important than during our COVID experiences where we were able to share with family and loved ones quite a rich experience using the Portal system. But what's this category dedicated to? This category is primarily dedicated to enhancing social presence across our homes. And we're working to make moments more meaningful, whether it's through changing people's communication socially, professionally, like it is the case here, or indeed as a learner. But this will not obviously be the focus of my presentation here today. Let's look at VR for a second as well. And I think of VR as a successor to the personal computer. It's a powerful, rich environment in which to interact with the digital world in a fixed location. Different from AR that overlaps reality, VR or virtual reality creates a virtual environment or experience. In VR, you wear a headset that blacks out the real world and presents primarily virtual images. VR involved into much more mature business from a hardware and software standpoint as the technology has evolved, but still requires a significant investment in areas like vision and artificial intelligence. Our Quest 2 being the most obvious success story with regards to more consumer-led, more affordable-led VR components. We believe that the next generation of VR will be a broader platform with a variety of uses, many of which have not even been conceived yet today. But one application that is very promising is in our workplace use, and that's in particular in terms of collaborative remote work. So how will the future look like? This is a beautiful slide that we have, which demonstrates what we believe could be a future vision for VR of a virtual workspace. This is a custom setup like the one pictured here with completely configurable and on multiple virtual screens, whiteboards and other virtual tools, and with the ability to save and restore any number of configurations with a click or a gesture. Throw in then the ability to interact with my real surroundings and use a keyboard or a mouse, or even more, just to have a virtual keyboard or a mouse on any convenient surface or even in midair. Now that would be a great work environment, wouldn't you think? Now that workspace unfortunately doesn't exist today, and for the last 7 years, Facebook has been pushing the envelope on all the technologies that would be needed to build it, including the display, the haptic interfaces, the hand tracking, the eye tracking, the mixed reality, the sensors, the audio, and the graphics. However, we are highly confident that a great virtual workspace can happen and will happen. And when it does, it will open the door to an entire new generation of VR, which will in turn unlock human potential on a massive scale. In short, the way I think about this, it could redefine the way we work and the way we live. Okay, now let's turn to augmented reality, which is the focus of the talk, which lets us overlay objects into the real world. In AR, virtual images are represented on all-day wearable see-through glasses. They look much like everyday glasses, but have a built-in display, which my team are pioneering and developing. The glasses themselves obviously are used to enhance your vision, but what happens if your glasses enhance your perception in other ways? Imagine AR glasses that enhance our perception so the lines between the virtual and the real world becomes completely blurred. Gives us very, very deep experiences, strong connections, and richer lives. Full AR will include augmentation that enhances your vision and hearing seamlessly, will make you smarter and more capable, is light, affordable, and comfortable. It has to be stylish, it has to be power efficient, and above all, it has to be socially acceptable, enough to accompany you everywhere you go. The way I like to think of the technology, though, is imagine having this is what will really matter as a smart assistant on your shoulders. And I'll discuss that in a second. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, today phones and 2D interfaces limit the amount of information they can send us, and that's especially true when it comes to AR. Because of the tiny screen and the need to hold a phone up to see virtual augmented scenes. You can see the picture here in front of you and the limitations of the interaction between the two people here at this table. Now, while phones have brought us many benefits, in general, our interactions with them are far from ideal in several respects. First, we spend a lot of time focused on them rather than interacting with people and the world around us. It's far too often you see people walking around with phones and they're just completely focused on the phone and nothing else, oblivious to other aspects. What we need out then is a more natural, intuitive way to interact with our devices and to access information. Ways that doesn't sacrifice connections to people around us and bring us information at something approaching the full bandwidth of our full potential and perceptions. And that is where the ability of AR to mix real and virtual world freely comes in. So the way we think about it is, imagine for a minute having a pair of stylish AR glasses that you could support everything from pure virtual reality to pure real reality, and that could enable you to teleport to a meeting or even to your grandmother's living room, no matter where you live. These glasses would virtualize all of your current information devices. So instead of having a phone, a TV, a stereo system, you just have one pair of glasses that provide you all the devices in a virtual form. As I said, the way I think of this as being like a tiny wireless assistant. It has perfect memory. It's connected to the internet. It's sitting on your shoulders or on your face, answering your questions and feeding you information by beaming it directly into your eyes and ears. So going back to the workspace for a minute, this will allow you to access the virtual space. I talked about that earlier, no matter where you are. Sure, it wouldn't be as expansive as a VR system, but you would still be able to bring it anywhere, including a coffee shop, in a meeting, or even at an airport. This would help you hear better in noisy environments, as the man here is showing, and see better in low light conditions, and could help vision and hearing impaired people function better. The glasses would also enable you to instantly search for and share information about the physical and virtual worlds. You could have a truly professionalized assistant that could feed you key statistics in a business meeting, guide you to destinations, and translate signs on the fly. Guide you through almost any task, the personal favorite of mine, and even tell you when you've left something behind that you'll need. With these glasses, we could also anchor both personal and shareable virtual content in the real world. So you could leave a 3D message for your daughter on the fridge, per se, or see what's on tap just by looking towards the bar on the right-hand side. I think you'd all agree if those glasses existed today, I believe we'd all be wearing them just right now, just like we've all got smartphones today. Okay, everything I just described is physically possible, and so it's clear that those glasses would be hugely useful, even more so than a mobile computer today. And I have no doubt that in the not too distant future, we will really be wearing these glasses that can deliver on the full promise of AR. There is, however, one small, pretty significant obstacle. I'll touch on this. The technology that would allow most of that to happen doesn't simply exist yet. That doesn't mean it's not impossible, it's just hard. And as with VR, FRL is developing the necessary technologies to do so. So what is it going to take to get there? Well, I've got this slide here, which just gives a key insight. AR glasses will be much more technology challenging than VR headsets. In fact, the sets of technologies needed to build them doesn't exist today, and it may take 5, it may take 10, or even longer. But eventually we will have to, we believe that they will become a vital part of our everyday lives. FRL is working on achieving, FRL is working on achieving the breakthroughs necessary to deliver AR, but it will also take many technical breakthroughs in these 3 key areas. Since a lot of the technology has yet to be invented, we must overinvest in concepts and projects. And we know that some of these will not necessarily materialize, but AR represents the area where we have the most inventing and research to do. Okay, just to summarize, I hope that this gives you a sense of why I believe that the AR/VR is going to be a transformational technology over the decades to come, and one that will change everything with respect to our digital lives. I hope as well that this gives you some inspiration with regards to the component developments and the technologies developments that are needed to enable VR and AR. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciated being with you here today. And now I'll hand you back to Daniel. Thank you.
And thank you very much for this overview. Very, very intriguing topics. I have a couple of questions, but I'll save them for our panel, which is going to come up in about 20 minutes. So if you're listening in and have some questions, just post them and I'll be happy to address them during our panel, where we're going to try and find out exactly how this whole VR, AR thing actually might work or not. However, we'd like to meet someone else first. And to find out who he is, let's roll the intro. And here he is, David Rose, all the way from the US. And we will find out if AR is going mainstream. Actually, he says AR is going mainstream. Let's find out. Hello, David. How are you? I believe you're still muted. So I believe...
I'm here.
Good to see you, David. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Fantastic. So you're saying AR is going mainstream, and we'll find out within the next 20 minutes why and how. David, stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to be with you this morning. I hope you can see my screen that says Super Sight. Can you? Can you see my screen share?
I currently cannot. Let's see if the studio can just give me an update if we can. Dear studio, just pop me a note. If we can see David's slides, that would be sweet. Let's see, we're still on it, I believe. Don't worry, we'll get it sorted. So, dear studio, can we see David's slides? Yes or no? That would be quite good and quite important to know. Obviously, we're running all of this quite remote as well. I've just seen there's a message incoming now, so I should be able to tell you a little more in a second. There are your slides. Now I can see them. Stage is yours and enjoy yourself.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for having me come this morning. I'm going to talk about the next platform for computing, which I've been working on for a book about, and also a number of projects that I'd love to share with you this morning. I'm getting some back chatter. I don't know exactly how to fix that, but I will ignore it in the interest of going on. This new world of spatial computing is something that we kind of have seen coming for a long time. And today I want to talk about why we should think about this as kind of the evolution of eyes. The animal world has many optimizations and evolutions for the world of sights. And humans, I believe, are about to experience a next large evolution. I've been at a company called Warby Parker, which sells glasses, fashionable glasses that have been fashionable for a long time, and these, I believe, are coming as kind of the next platform. One of the problems with COVID has been that these glasses have been harder to buy online, and we built a tool that allows you to do virtual try-on of these glasses and effectively sell them at a distance. And not only to see, but also projects like Bose AR, which allows you to put AirPods in the temples of your glasses in order to do things like, so I'm just gonna pop. mute that. That's better for me. In order to be able to get information about, I mean, not only open ear audio for music, but also things like fitness when you're doing a workout or podcasts or content that has to do with where you are and where you're looking in the city. And I know we're having a fireside chat with someone from Facebook, I think, who has working on some of the same audio-based augmented reality. And these glasses have an inertial motion unit, so they know where you're looking and the tilt of your head. So when you look at specific things, they can provide specific information just using location and tilts and gyro. Now, there's been a lot of patents activity around this by all the major platforms, and it's kind of one of the reasons why there's a lot of excitement and investment in this category. One of these companies is called North. They were acquired by Google, but they're really trying to approach this, not Microsoft HoloLens, kind of a wonky, obvious fixture on your head, but something that looks close to everyday glasses. And these showed you in a monocular way, kind of prompts similar to what you'd find on an Apple Watch. But I've been doing experiments and working on a number of projects around kind of what are more use cases. And one of the ones I'll show you this morning is, this is me kind of doing a rowing experience where in addition to seeing the screen in front of me, which is showing me someone I'm rowing with, it also shows me a regatta experience where people are rowing past, which is definitely motivating. And these glasses, these Nreals, which are have come down and launched in 3 countries, are able to both project information that you see through them, as well as sense the world and have some perception in the forward direction. So, what might we want to do with these coming glasses? Snap has offered one model for this, which is you may want to record things about your life and share those. But I think there are other benefits. I think the benefits of SuperSight really are these kind of 10 words, and I hope we can have some discussion about these in the fireside. Which is the first is kind of the first few are at the personal scale, and then more of the how we function as an organization, as organizations and societies, and then really things that are more at the global kind of being able to see things from space and interpret those things. So the first benefit, or the first gift, I think, that we receive from wearing these glasses is to have the world around us kind of named and explained. If there, so I was going to ask you to express your opinion about whether you'd like to have, you can put a thumbs up if you're interested in, like, would you like to know everyone's name? Would you like to know, have everyone know your name? Maybe the apps that help us understand this named world, they work slower today, but apps like iNaturalist allow you to tag the bugs and the bats and the herons that are in your neighborhood, and then see where other people have tagged these things. But I think the real power for the naming comes not only in faces, but also knowing kind of interests of other people and conversational prompts that will be floating around people's heads. And the technology that will really be the game changer is becoming faster and faster in terms of its efficiency. It's called scene segmentation. So this allows us, in the same way that the web allowed words to become clickable, this allows pixels that are occupied by the cars, the people, the street lamps to become gesturable, to become interrogable in front of you. So this is really the kind of Harry Potter wish we've all had for some time, which is to be able to identify something, apply a verb, and make it so. There'll probably be a backlash to this named world. This artist Adam Harvey has done an experiment where he's kind of invented new types of makeup that allow the that make the computer vision systems fail. Well, the next project that I wanted to share, has more to do with understanding you rather than understanding the world. And we've been working with helping people exercise without injury in the home, similar to what Mirror.co is doing by kind of putting AR on a surface in your room, no glasses required, or what Hydro is doing with a Peloton-like rowing experience. So we've been using these pose classifiers, which look at you and try to understand your pose, and then trying to understand the difference between your pose and a professional. These are using neural networks that can do this with a monocular camera, which is kind of a big new deal, and in 3D. So this is a Facebook classifier that just takes ordinary video and is able to extrapolate even for fast spinning sports like ice skating. And then we use something called dynamic time warping, which allows us to align the motion so you can compare the arc of your ski turn or your tennis serve to someone else's. And I think there's a big opportunity for an AI coach in this space that is fun, that is not just about analysis, but also about motivating you. This is a HIT exercise where you have to get into the box, powered by home court. The next project I want to show is one from that I did while at Warby Parker, and this was for helping you kind of make a style choice, which is a next level of sophistication for these AI systems. So we use the iPhone 10 camera, which casts a mesh on your face and allows you to pick glasses that fit your face and that were also purchased by other people that have similar faces to yours. So we call it virtual try-on. This is me wearing some glasses. Oh, those were virtual glasses. So you can see the real match the virtual quite well, and the position on your face, which is also the hardest part, in addition to the size, to get right. So this has been quite effective for selling. The next kind of promise, I think, of these super-sighted systems will be to do boring jobs that we don't want to do. One of those is like the drudgery of cleaning. I don't think mobile robots need to do all of that drudgery. I think having arms that can hide away on the ceiling and unload the dishwasher or pick your plant wall is one way through that. The next project, I'm an advisor to a company that is using AI to do some work in the health space. It's called Podim DX and allows you to take pictures of rashes and connect you to home test kits or to doctors as part of that. So I think these systems will not only disperse medicine, but also change jobs in the way that doctors, the types of things that are the domain of doctors. So if you kind of think about a framework that says, are doctors really, are they the best for diagnosis? Well, no, AI will actually be better for diagnosis in many cases. Are they better for communication? In many cases, yes. Are they better for continuing care? A lot of that will be, I think, handed off to other systems like pose detection and other AI-based systems. In the interest of time, I'm going to go forward and talk about another project that we're doing to use AI as a way of seeing as an industrial use case. So one of the benefits of taking information and projecting it onto the world is to be able to see into and through things. In, for example, a street scene where you would like to know where the pipes and the electric lines are buried, allow you to kind of project that information in the real space context where it is. I was doing a presentation about this and mentioned this at a healthcare conference. People are very excited about doing this in the human body for surgery planning, for example. But somebody approached me afterwards and said, "Are you a fisherman?" And I said, "I do love fishing, but I often don't know where to go to catch the fish. You know, you're out on a boat and you have no idea where, you know, where the topography is below you, or what lures to use, etc. So you kind of feel lost in this illegible world." So we thought, well, maybe we could use the same kind of AR to show you good places to troll or to cast in order to find certain types of fish. And then you even can take what's called hydrobathy, which is the terrain map that's given by the marine electronics industry and derived by the marine electronics industry in order to cast that information into your field of view, into these glasses as you look out onto the water. So we are doing this now with a game engine called Unity, which is a kind of standard game engine, and being able to project these 3D objects into the world in front of you in order to find fish. So that's a project called clear.ar if people are interested in seeing more about that. And the next one I want to show you is rather than talking about collaboration, I want to talk about the last benefit I see for, and maybe the most important benefit of AR, which is to help people imagine. I feel like there's a imagination gap that we all have. As we look at something, it's kind of hard to imagine what something could become. That's why we hire an architect or an interior designer. And where this matters in terms of sustainability and climate is many people who own homes feel kind of lost about what to do with their own landscapes. They don't feel like they have the knowledge, the experience, they don't know, they're worried that something is going to, that the landscape that they plant, the trees that they plant are not going to survive. And so a project that I've been doing over the last year is to use satellite and drone imagery to basically make a 3D parallel world of the real world, and then try to proactively install or propose new sustainable landscapes that are desirable. The way that this is done is by what's called a generative adversarial network, where it proposes a design and then a second network just is a judge of that design. And so there's a cost function where you try to kind of make the best landscape possible. And the way that the app plays out, it's called Home Outside, is you take a street view image like this home in Detroit, and this visualization is emailed to someone, to the owner of this home, proactively without them paying anything. And then it kind of shows them how nice their yard could be and explains the different facets of the design, shows them why you might want a shade tree to save on heating costs, and why you want natural pollinators and why you want a place outside for sociability. And then shows them kind of gives them a set of parameters that say, do you want to spend more money on being private from your neighbors, or more money on, helps them kind of make choices about being more welcoming or private, or spare versus filled in, or what specific style, formal style that they would like. So I feel like this kind of project really has the potential to use AR for something that is a really societal good, to be able to help people imagine something that motivate them to take the next step in envisioning and moving ahead on a plan. So with that, that's a quick overview of a few chapters of the book and kind of what I see as the benefits of AI and of supersites. And I'm excited to hear from you and for this next session to talk about with our colleague from Facebook about kind of what are some of the upsides and also what are some of the downsides of this coming world. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much for that. I'll jump in there. Here's the idea. How about we shift this talk straight to our panel, because then we'll just get Podrick from Facebook to join us, because you've referenced him a couple times. And whatever questions also comes up from you out there, dear audience, we'll also just add them to the mix. I think that sounds like a fair thing to do. Only one more thing to do, and that's roll the intro video.
Hi, Podrick. I see you.
It is time to rethink and to realign, learn and get inspired. Prepare your questions and enjoy this insightful Podim DX panel.
And we're back for our panel, where we just said, as promised, that we want to talk a little bit about this whole VR, AR stuff. The actual title is Reality is Mixed. When will we finally live in the Mission Impossible movie? Now that sounds, I think, quite promising to say the least. Yeah, gentlemen, I believe you have not met, right?
We have not yet.
No.
Okay. Well, you should in the real world. And in the real world, you'd probably end up having an amazing drink. However, that's not quite possible. So we'll have to do this in this setting. I believe, David, you kind of missed parts of Podrick's talk. Podrick, you've been closely observing David's talk. And
Mm.
I appreciate that you've been here.
Yeah. So, David, honestly, I was fascinated by your talk. It resonates a lot with what our mission is about in Facebook with regards to the kind of applications, because in some respects, when you look back in life, if you think about it, we're in a very privileged piece of work that we're working on. We're working on what I would describe as, it only happens in a generation, this next generation of human compute platform technologies, which is AR and VR. It's second only to what the mobile phone and the computer was beforehand. And I think the beautiful thing about this in some respects is that, and it touches exactly, David, to the spirit of your presentation. You know, when I look back at what the phone was originally intended for, which is to make phone calls, and how it's evolved into something very different today, I think that's the beauty of where AR is today. We simply don't know, maybe 15 years from now, how we can tap into the true potential of AR and what it can do for society benefits. So I have great pride in what we're doing, and I have great hope with regards to what the technology can enable for society and for the broader public as a whole.
And Podrick, do you see the fact that games are kind of seen as the first and obvious use case? Does that seem like a natural for you, or are you trying to kind of push and pull applications and entrepreneurs and other partners into helping people in the telemedicine field, or helping people in the more in the world of work, or more in the design field? Like, do you have a bias for which applications should be the leading ones in order to help people see the potential for this, not only as a kind of Pokemon Go future?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, our end game is a consumer-led AR glass solution. But having said that, you know, the early adopters and the initiators from our early Oculus days were obviously the gamer teams, and we're very deeply supportive of those people who've helped us with regards to enabling the VR content and the hardware, you know, understanding the benefits and technology capabilities of that, and basically testing the hardware. But we've moved a little bit on from that. You know, in the early days, you know, that VR headsets, and I have some of them still here, you know, they're tower top computers requiring a lot of bandwidth, you know, expensive computers, etc., which made it only elite us towards, you know, gaming specialists. But we wanted to move on from that, and I'm pleased to say that the journey that our VR platform has taken has transcended from something that, you know, maybe considered prohibitive from the point of view of early adoption from a cost perspective, but something that's much more affordable in the hundreds of dollars range, which is very easy to wear in the Quest 2 headset. That makes it much more adoptable, much more easier to purchase. It's affordable. It allows people to explore and incentivize people to be creative. I think that's the entrepreneurship that I think this whole program is about. It. And as a fellow entrepreneur who spent a lot of my career in that space, you know, I look into this area. I would be a sponge. I'd be trying to take as much of the information as I can from this and understand what business technology opportunities that can be available to us in the future. And I see huge potential in the technology.
Gentlemen, I'd like to jump in here because I see the two of you getting on perfectly fine. That's something we kind of hoped and expected. The funny thing is now I've been kind of in this whole world for 10 years, and there've been a lot of talks on AR and VR, and like literally every year people saying now's the time for it, now's the time for it. And I'm curious, how far are we away from a bit of a, let's call it the T model, so to speak, because I have the impression that a broad part of the, let's say, Western educated audience is like totally intrigued by the technology, but just very few actually buy it at this point. However, we all see the incredible potential in it. So where are we right now? If we'd have to put it in parallels, let's say with the car development.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a framework. I mean, the framework that I often think about is called the long nose of innovation. Where like some of us, I mean, I feel like I've been living in the future and into the kind of fringe bleeding edge of the future for my entire career, because I've been at places like the MIT Media Lab, speaking at Google and collaborating on projects for brands that are really trying to explore that bleeding edge. And in some way, like, it's kind of not that interesting of a question if you're in the research world, because you're just trying to like develop things that feel like magic and that feel really compelling. And when smartwatches just crossed in 2019 the threshold of 15% of adoption, which for many is seen as like the chasm crossing moment where it goes from early adopters into more mainstream. And so, I feel like maybe VCs are very, and probably Facebook is very concerned about this question about like, well, when will most of us be wearing smart glasses? For me, I'm kind of more interested in what can we do with them, and how does that change like the relationships that people have when people are wearing them, or the fishing experiences, or and I feel like there's so many people in the industry that are really focused on the size reduction, cost reduction, performance of the system that will bring them into the mainstream. But I'm interested in what my colleague has to say about this.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, yes, this, like many technologies, AR has been discussed and been around at some level for quite some time. I mean, I'm not going to specifically talk about Facebook's product plans per se, but what I can say, if you look at, for example, the old development reports, they're really talking about OEM adoption in around the 2023 timeframe. So what's that telling you? It's telling you that the technology is getting closer to prime time. We're not quite yet there. We still have a lot of innovation to get to. But I think there's a real key yearning here to actually get this technology to fruition. And there will be early developers who will bring out first generation technologies, and others who will wait longer for more compelling technologies to emerge. But we will see definitely the emergence of AR glass technologies in very different formats of functionality and affordability over the coming period. My analogy to the phone and to the computer, we're going, this is a very, very early stage. We're kind of at the very stages of the first phones, large, big phones. We're now talking about something that has to get to where the Apples and other manufacturers, Samsung and other manufacturers are getting to today. That's a 25-year journey. It'll go across several generations of the technology. And we're just at the cusp of the start of that innovation and development.
I'm liking that analogy a lot. And I mean, if we look at the mobile development, I mean, initially smartphones, or the early smartphones, were let's say, nice, tricky gadgets, right? If you could download apps as early as, I believe, 2000, what was it? 1 or 2002, but just very few people could actually do that. And then obviously with the iPhone that came along and third-party markets opening up, that was a huge jump. I believe, I know I'm kind of mixing things up, and please bear with me on this one, but I believe to have read, and again, if the information is wrong, please shoot me. Don't. That apparently the US Army recently decided to adopt the HoloLens, something along those lines, I believe to have read. And that was usually a sign for me, if the Army decides to go down that route, that means suddenly that's one way of taking this a step further. And of course, also tens of thousands of young people who are suddenly introduced to technology, where they say, hey, this is amazing, I want to have that as well. How much of a game changer is this information?
My experience, if I could, David, for a second, I've worked in both for military and European Space Agency applications in the past. You'll always find that a lot of the leading edge technologies are derived from those industries, and then they become more adaptable and more outstreamed into more consumer areas. So when you see the military applications, the high-end, technology development, and you see that adoption, what will happen then from that technology is a transition into more consumer-led technology. So it's not surprising that a lot of the early adoptions of technologies of this nature are more at the higher end in areas such as military and space developments. So it's not surprising that's the way the model can work in areas like this. But having said that, I do want to make it clear that Facebook is primarily focused on a consumer-led program development, which has very, very different challenges, to sort of more high-end premium situations in the military applications. It's not to say that what we're developing is not premium, but it's for a different market segment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I think for entrepreneurs, the kind of good news to latch on to is, we are always on the shoulders of giants. Like we benefit from the billions of dollars that Facebook and Google and Amazon and Apple and all of those other companies, those cloud providers, are doing, investing in hardware layers, in the perceptual computing layers, in the we benefit from what Unreal and Unity are doing in the game engine layers, and all of the connectivity that's being done by telcos in order to deliver high bandwidth, the cloud, and the data to some extent. I mean, if you take this kind of marine application that I showed, what's the innovation there, right? Like somebody else is making the hardware, somebody else has made the game engine. The marine electronics industry has been capturing data for lakes and oceans for decades, probably for military initially. And we're like, as an entrepreneur, like we're just this little glue layer, which just says, oh, well, we will, thank you very much, inherit all of those innovations from all of those different parties, and hopefully like develop something that's a compelling experience that we can, monetize kind of as but it's a very thin layer. So we need to be not cynical, but supportive of all of these other people that are playing their role in this kind of innovation stack.
I'm curious if I'd have to think this forward now, because we've got a lot of thriving entrepreneurs and early stage founders listening in. And I'm always curious to understand, where do I need to be in my mindset in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years to understand what the solutions that are needed then are going to be in order to start now? And for me, in a way, what I find interesting is you're saying, okay, sooner or later, the mass adoption will come. And with it, there'll be people whose skills are going to be elevated to a certain degree, like we just heard, like as easy as memorizing names of people, knowing which way to go, suddenly knowing certain traits. What is the next level we need to start looking at now in order to kind of be a step ahead? Because I have the feeling that a lot of in the AR and VR talk, there's sometimes wild use cases that people show that are really far off. And at the end of the day, it's going to be not less complicated, but however, a lot less, how should I say, wild in its approach. So what's a field we should be looking at in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Are we talking about third-party markets? What is it?
Well, I think
there's one. Okay, David, go on.
No,
you go first. Go on.
I think the entrepreneurial skill, I believe, is identifying kind of market readiness, whether the metaphor is a wave that's about to break, but it's identifying like voiced needs and latent needs in a market, and understanding and not making the classic mistakes, of which there are many, but I mean, one classic mistake is believing that the technology is the wave is breaking before it's actually breaking, like it's that the technology is ready to support your vision. That's one that I've made again and again over my career. But the other one is to, I would say, like, imagine something that has too much complexity. Because as any group of people or any person kind of continues to think about solving a problem, you keep going further and elaborating on that and adding more ideas and adding more, it becomes kind of this Byzantine Gothic cathedral of extras. And I think like lean methodology and minimum viable product, like those disciplines are offering clarity and helpfulness to entrepreneurs to say, like, just what's the one thing? Like, what's the one thing if you could solve with this tech? Like, maybe it's just names of people. Maybe it's just navigating through a hospital, through a complex environment. Maybe it's just seeing into the human body as a way of understanding what your shoulder replacement is going to look like and signing the consent form. Like, but oftentimes these kind of the best use cases have this feature of like, oh, it's just one thing.
I want to touch on that before you dig in there, Podrick. The funny thing is, for me, like, I was born in 1981. So, and when I went to school, it was about learning, let's say, one source off by heart. So, and I went to business school and it was the same thing. Nowadays, I lecture in a couple of universities, and I can see one of the biggest challenges nowadays, also for school kids, is deciding which source is the right one, having a plethora of information and being able to process information and come up with something that makes sense. So in a way, there was a huge change in the way education works due to internet technology, mobile technology, and whatnot. And for me, the interesting thing is now, if we suddenly have all this information at our fingertips, or even better, within our glasses, what's the next level of skill sets or traits we need as consumers, educators, and whatnot, which we're not seeing yet?
Okay, so it's a great question, and the way I think of this is, and I'm coming this from a person who's worked in a startup world for some time. You can have the near-term focus, which is basically looking at what we believe today is the needs of AR, and I've touched on some of those around some, and so has David, around some of the technologies in audio, display, and other areas. But the key innovation and the success for next generation startups will be the experiences and understanding of the user case studies that will evolve from AR over the coming generation. So once we start in then launching these, people get to understand how best to use them. It's a bit like when the phone started, how best to use the phone. All of a sudden apps started to come on the phones. So people will now start to leverage on the user experiences that are enabled by the first generation. And that's where real successes will start to appear. The near-term successes are well understood in some respects. They're challenging, and there's still a lot of technology hurdles to overcome, but it's clear what are the near-term needs in order to make the technology and hardware successful. Then when you get into having the technology and be able to share the technology, use the experiences in everyday life, that's going to unlock a huge area of really fruitful technology development and ideas that have not been thought of heretofore. So the thing I like to think about this is it's just an untapped area of innovation. We simply just don't know today, because we need that incremental hurdle first to actually realize something, to have it in our space, to actually feel it, walk it, experience it, and that creates a second level of innovation, which I think would be game-changing. I just don't know what that answer is yet today.
I find it super intriguing. Now, you see, I have a really strong 12-year-old, like an inner 12-year-old, I call it, which is easily entertained. And while you guys were talking, I just had to think of the world of dating, for example. If you suddenly implement this into the world of dating, you're going to a bar and suddenly you have all the actual facts of the person you're just meeting there. Someone says, oh, you look gorgeous, lying. And oh, you're the most beautiful woman I saw in the world, not true. And all of that. So that would probably lead to changing probably the world of dating, would change the way doctors would talk with you, all of that. So in a way, it sounds like we'd probably have a lot of, we'd probably, let's say we're all grown-ups, we'd probably cut a lot of bullshit out. Am I getting that right? Is that the huge opportunity of AR and VR of cutting out bullshit?
I don't know. I think I don't know if you watched Westworld, but
I
there
did
is this
not.
there's this fantasy that technology is mostly for de-frictioning the world, you know, for making it more efficient and kind of getting to what you need, whether it's a dating goal or something else. And for me, kind of Westworld, it was an amusement park. Started as a book, and then it was a TV series in the 70s, I think, and then most recently redone. And you know, it was a place that people went to interact um, with androids and kind of act out wild fantasies and you know, be able to shoot others on a kind of uh, wild west theme. And for me, it's the opposite of frictionless. Like, that was a place of friction. Like, that was a place where you went there for the for the drama and for the storyline. And so I feel like there may be this counter solution that this technology can provide as well, which is not only the giving you what you need and in those moments that you need it, but also maybe decorating the world in a way that allows you to see more and to see history, and to, you know, there will be diminished reality that hides the things you don't want, but then there will be these kind of rich augmentations of things that where maybe it kind of introduces complexity into things in ways that are useful. I mean, in the book, I have these 5 hazards of supersight that I go into, which, you know, are like surveillance states and pervasive persuasion, kind of the advertising future, and the equity and access issues like supersight for some. And the one that you just touched on in your question was kind of this cognitive crutches problem, where when a new technology comes out that helps us do something much more efficiently, whether it's like GPS or calculators or whatever, we say, well, what about, aren't these natural talents that are going to atrophy in humans because we'll be able to know people's names, we won't have to remember it, and because we have conversational prompts buzzing around people's heads, we'll become terrible conversationalists if we don't have that technology anymore. Maybe, but I also feel like we level up. You know, we will use our own cognitive cycles for attending to other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have the feeling you're thinking about something, Porter. You're like, there's something going on.
No, I mean, I just hate to think
Hopefully.
in some respects that we lose that innocence with regards to dating as well. In some respects, you know, I mean, just in some respects, you know, I want to make this very clear is that at Facebook we take the privacy and that information share very seriously. So, and this is very much uncharted territories that we're working through at the moment. So, we need to think this through in terms of the whole product cycle development. And, you know, you can have situations where there may be opt-in or opt-out situations in situations like that, because, you know, there's certain experiences that you want to enjoy, and there's certain experiences that you want to get a more richer experience with. And some experiences have a sense of fun and some sense of a very sense of seriousness. So we got to get that balance right in terms of how we move forward. But we will be providing, at least through Facebook, we'll be providing the transparency into how our processes and policies will be developed. And we'll do this through, you know, our own products development cycles and the team training with regards to develop our technology, you know, in a trustful way, which manages privacy context. So I think that's an important point, that we've got to strike the balance correctly as well. And as much as what we're trying to develop is exciting technology, we have to balance that.
I mean, can I ask you a quick question about kind of the world of work, and if these glasses come about and many of us are wearing them, they will bring kind of a new kind of quantification of everything we do. Like, the Facebook is famous for likes, and you know, the kind of Fitbit quantified, like, this is what you did today, will be more and more possible with more and more sensing. And I'm kind of interested in, Podrick, do you feel like the world of gaming and the world of work, like, are inevitably colliding, and like, what might that look like?
Well, I'm not sure if they're colliding. I think they're complementary. But what I would say is that, you know, in as much as I'm using this portal here today, and if I move my head sideways, it'll follow me. I think that in virtual space, for example, workplace will enable a greater level of immersive interaction and decision making and quick, decisive decision making that doesn't exist simply today. So I think the outcomes will allow us to do things and allow us to free our mind and our subconscious mind into areas which are really important with regards to, you know, key decision makes, etc., with regards to the way we want to problem solve or the way we want to get to a disarming negotiation decision, for example. So I can see benefits on the technology, where the technology can enable more efficient and more proficient workplace cultures and styles. In as much as the way we're doing it today, we're trying to improve all the while. Even the portal system is doing a great job for us in our work environments on a day-to-day basis, because, you know, we have to accept that, you know, the deep immersive experience that's lacking in a physical presence has to be compensated somehow through this virtual presence. And we're making good inroads to understand what those issues might look like. But overall, I think, from my perspective, the most important thing about the workplace is to become more as productive as possible. And that has to be the ethos of a good workplace, is to be as productive as possible and for people to enjoy their work. And I think this will enable that to occur. You know, I don't want to say too much, but it can help with regards to the amount of travel commitments we have to engage upon. There may be things where we can do this, David, instead of you and I having to meet in person, we can meet virtually and still have the same experience, still get the same outcomes, but not have the hassle of doing all the travel commitments. It frees up more time for our families and friends, etc. So it has upside benefits with regards to technologies of this nature.
I think there's, I don't know if you can see my screen, but one of the features of Facebook Portal, which I find really fascinating, is they introduce this kind of cartoon-like layer between you and the person you're talking to as a kind of a face filter, like as a decoration that sticks to your face. And the one from their advertising shows kind of a grandmother speaking with a grandchild, and she's kind of doing the piggy story, and that she has a nose and like some kind of you can see the fox in the foreground and some trees in the background, and I really like this notion that in the world of work you might also have this kind of rotoscoped, face filtered future, you know, above people's heads and above the objects that people interact with. And I wonder, Patrick, do you feel like that is coming sooner than we all imagine to the world of work, or do you really think it's more kind of a storytelling and fantasy kind of application?
No. I mean, first of all, Facebook is very supportive of bringing your authentic self to work, and how you express yourself at work is really, really important. And I see that on every day. When Daniel first introduced himself, Daniel said, "Oh, that's a nice background." I said, "Well, Daniel, this is my authentic, this is my real self. This is the way I show up at work. I'm not going to go behind a dark white screen here with a tie and suited up for. No, this is just the way I show up. This is the way you'll see me at work every day." And I think that's the spirit in which we want to bring. And I always say that work is very serious, but it also requires a sense of fun. And sometimes it's nice to have a joke, share a laugh together, and how that can be. And there's moments in which you can do that. So, you know, I'm a fan in some respects of creating a relaxed environment and atmosphere, but a very serious content about how we do work. So I think work style, etc., will change over time. And it's just something that as society, technologies like this will actually help and support. I remember the first time my nieces and nephews saw those little faces expression. It just lit up their faces. There was about 12 months ago, and it's just a joy to watch. We couldn't meet each other, but yet they got a great sense of me switching through the different feature sets and getting a good laugh, and I had a good laugh just watching them, and that just brings that moment together as a family. And that's what this is all about, is that social presence. It's that work presence that we have as individuals to be able to compensate for situations where we can't always meet in real time and in real space.
Quick question, gentlemen, because I think we've still got like 1.5 minutes left or something. I'm just curious, is retrofitting going to be one of the crucial aspects from a technical point of view? Retrofitting to glasses?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
When you say retrofitting, do you mean using your existing glasses and putting something on top of your existing
Correct.
glasses? Or?
Correct.
I don't think so. I mean, if you look at what Nreal is doing, if you need a corrective prescription, you can snap that in. And so they can accommodate any prescription that you have. And so, I mean, I feel like they, whether it's sunglasses or big glasses because you want ones for work or whatever, like we will, in the same way that we have multiple of these, we will have multiple of these as well for different, for different situations. And sometimes larger is okay, sometimes smaller is okay. And just like smartwatches, I mean, they definitely change their style accessory, but we'll see how quickly they get adopted in different contexts.
Interesting. Thank you, Podrick. 10 seconds on that answer if you'd like to jump in.
I mean, we're partnering with well-known Luxottica brand names for Ray-Bans, etc. So watch this space. We're going to come up with some very exciting, cool, I would say sexy golf, very, very nice, sexy-looking glasses. Whether they'll do what you do at this stage in the near term, I'm not so sure. But watch this space.
I was hoping we were going to say that. Thank you very much. I was hoping you would have mentioned Ray-Ban. Just no pressure there, but I'm a big fan. Anyhow, gentlemen, just trying to summarize, like in 20 seconds, you just nod like this or like that. That we've kind of understood, okay, yes, this is going to come. We'll have to look at the long nose of innovation. So yes, it still might take some years. However, 2023 might be an interesting year. We talked about HoloLens and we talked about the entrepreneurs are on the shoulders of giants. We talked about the huge, let's say, potential in this space. However, we also understood we need to know when the wave's actually going to be breaking, and they shouldn't be breaking too early. We talked about the near-term focus and, of course, about strong user case journeys and studies. And we also kind of had a little bit of a deep dive into the world of dating and how conversation, how human interaction can change. However, we also talked about this huge potential of a new type of quantification, which could essentially lead to us all being a little bit more happier because we'll be enjoying what we're doing a little more later on. And we talked about how important it is to create a professional environment and, of course, also a relaxed environment. Yeah, I think that's kind of a bit of a summary. What did I leave out? Are you happy?
Check out the old development reports. They're quite interesting on this technology. If you're in the startup game, it's really worth looking at who the actors and who are the players in this space.
Thank you very much for that, David.
I think my last idea is don't feel like you kind of have a perfect solution until you get in and prototype it. Because you learn so much, like you almost always have, especially for a brand new medium, like a lot of us can kind of envision like what an app might do or look like or feel like. But if it's a brand new medium like this, you must get in and experience it. And then you realize how many of your assumptions are wrong.
And that's the magical words. David, Podrick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Take care and stay safe. And we'll be moving on to the next panel. And to find out what it is, let's roll the intro. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It is time to rethink and to realign. Learn and get inspired. Prepare your questions and enjoy this insightful Podim DX panel.
Marvelous. And we are back for our panel. Now, this is a bit of a change in topic, but might as well. It's going to touch upon what we talked about a little early on. And the topic is called Sustainability Information Should Be as Common as Price or Size. Sounds quite promising, I believe. However, let's get our panelists on stage and let's welcome Mandeep, Ziga, and Tanya. Hello to the three of you.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
Hello to the three of you. Now, normally moderators would introduce you and get half of what they say wrong. So I like doing things differently, and therefore I'd kindly ask you to introduce yourselves in about 30 seconds or a minute that the audience gets a feel for you. And maybe we could start with Mandeep.
Great. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bendy. We are a data science-driven startup for brands and retailers in the fashion industry to help them to manage and communicate their sustainability data better.
Thank you very much. That was very much on point. Thank you very much, Ziga.
Yeah, hi from my side. I'm Žiga Dril from Slovenia. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm one of the founders of the Origin Trail ecosystem, and Origin Trail ecosystem is designated to make supply chains work by improving transparency, visibility, and eventually trust in supply chains.
Thank you very much. And Tanya.
Hi there, I'm Tanya Lavoie, and I work for Oracle Corporation. I'm Senior Director of Project Strategy for the Oracle Digital Division of Oracle.
Thank you very much. Now, the title is, I think, quite promising, and it kind of says, yeah, when is sustainability information going to be as common as price or size? And it took me a second to think about that title, because essentially it says, look, if you buy a product, it says, well, it's size M and it costs 20 euros. And that's what we usually have as information to decide on something, if we buy or not buy. Why should there be sustainability information added to a price tag? That's the part where one of you answers. Whoever feels obliged, just jump in, please.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to, yeah. I guess in some ways, I think it's 2021. We should know what the sustainability impacts of the products that we buy are as standard. It's kind of amazing that we don't. There's certainly a cry from all consumers. I think government's really also coming into that way of thinking with new regulations. But I think it's been a slow burn, I think, getting here, and it's finally culminating into this period. And we're seeing it, I think, definitely in the fashion industry, we're seeing it with brands doing this for the first time. And it's a unique selling point, but it's also, I think, yeah, it feels crazy that it's not as common as price and size. I think that's my position on that.
Yeah,
Tanya, Ziga.
Yeah, well, we've the importance of sustainability from customers. We're hearing so much more about it, and we're hearing customers are reaching out to us all the time now, asking us to see how can we help them transform their businesses and their products in a more sustainable way. And I think also the pandemic's actually helped accelerate that kind of thinking with our customers. Again, just like you said there regarding regulations, of course, we've seen the EU increasing the regulations, and also with the, it's a change driver, because there's things like the carbon taxes and other green penalties that are at large at the moment. So it's really important for our customers to kind of address sustainability on a number of levels, really. Oh, and RFPs as well, just thinking about it. We're getting loads of, RFPs that are coming our way. So again, related to the supplier, where they're wanting to understand, they're asking sustainability questions to the suppliers about, how they're actually addressing the carbon footprint and other sustainability measures within their organizations too.
Mm. Yeah, I guess from my side, we work with clients, and one of the striking facts, actually statistics, is that in the UK, 2/3 of executives, according to Food and Beverage Locked-in research for 2017, would say that they cannot vouch for integrity, they cannot vouch for authenticity and provenance of the food that they produce, so the raw ingredients. That's a pretty striking statistic. So essentially, in food supply chains, if we take this into consideration, we're playing a Russian roulette, and no one wants to play a Russian roulette with your own health. So this is one thing why sustainability facts should be confirmed or supported by more than just a narrative. Consumers are, at the end of the day, paying more for inferior products, and we hate to pay more if a product is not as quality as we expect. There is also a huge environmental burden if we don't know what exactly we consume, and supply chains tend to hide that. So this is another reason. And then there's a societal reason. Supply chains are oftentimes exploiting child labor. They're exploiting kind of sources of ingredients which might be deforesting certain regions. So there are plenty of reasons. And if we just look at 2020 year, what happened? We had fires in Australia, fires in South America. A lot of that somehow ties into what's going on in supply chains. Also, COVID crisis. In Slovenia, since I'm from Slovenia, I know what happened here when the government ordered the equipment to limit the spread. They oftentimes receive the fake equipment. So it's not only a sustainability claims, but also quality claims. And here we need to support the certification bodies, the law enforcement agencies, giving them more tools, more data to fence off such attempts.
I want to jump in here quickly because obviously I think the pandemic has kind of really accelerated this industry, and I'm taking already, okay, that all three of you have that opinion. However, like, the time is going to be wrong, but bear with me. I believe a year before Ursula von der Leyen signed the new Green Deal, which was supposed to be or might be Europe's moonshot in regards of turning Europe a little greener. How is this feeding into the whole topic? Is this kind of a European moment we're looking at right now as well? It's a good question if there's no answers. Mandeep, you were going like, not sure. Jump in.
So tell me, do you think that this is Europe's? Tell me again the question.
I have the feeling that shortly before the pandemic started, about a year before, Europe kind of decided to follow through with a new Green Deal, where they say they're going to invest, I don't know, whether 1,000 billion euros or something, a crazy amount of number into sustainability until 2050 to turn Europe as green as possible. Then came along the pandemic, which obviously kind of shifted focus partially. And then, as Ziga just said, okay, now we're looking at supply chains, we're looking at qualities, we're talking about sustainability, and probably not in all countries in the entire world, everyone's going to say we're ready for having sustainability information as our price tag. However, I have a feeling that this is something where Europe could have, let's say, a little bit of a moonshot moment where we could jump forwards in development, just because if we take all these factors into equation. And then again, also Europe being, well, not really on the producing end in the last 2, 3, 4 decades. So I have a feeling that that's Europe's moment.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it could be Europe's moment. I think overall, especially for developed nations, the crisis actually really made how important supply chains are, where our things come from, how little we actually know about that. I think it's really lifted that up in the kind of shared psyche of individuals. There's certainly the people that we're speaking to, consumers, but also brands themselves. I think this is sort of coming up further and further in their agenda. It might have been, the 5th most important thing or the 4th most important thing. And now it's like number 1 and number 2. People are making different choices about consumption, especially if they don't know where something comes from. And they are, as Ziga pointed out, I think they're prepared to pay more. So I think even leaving the Green Deal aside, of course, I think regulation has a really important force for good for something like this. But there is a great swell from consumers and industry and of themselves. And I think that is really a much bigger force in Europe than it is in other places.
Thank you. Now, if one of you wants to jump in, go for it. I'm very open for a very interactive discussion, because you also mentioned something else. I mean, you said, obviously, if a product is sustainable, if we can trace the roots of it, and let's say there's along the entire supply chain, it has been done in a sustainable way, they'll end up in having products that will cost more, at least now short to mid-term. And this is something we need to convey to the consumers. How much of a good job are we doing on this? How far are we at this point?
Yeah, I think when it comes to higher cost, we are paying a lot for products that are not sustainable. We just cannot measure the cost yet. It's not apparent to consumers. And on the other side, on the other hand, if we somehow allow quality producers to differentiate themselves, and we do have some experience within food supply chains where we can kind of, when we know the supply chains, we know also the farmers, and we know the producers. And through several years, we saw a very interesting effect, because consumer was actually able to distinguish between less quality and quality products. The quality products which of course came with all the support into sustainability claims, became less expensive due to economies of scale. And they could afford economies of scale because a new market started to appear for them, because the new market was based on the quality assurance information they were able to provide. So perhaps short term, we might see that consumers, when buying products that are truly supported by sustainability claims, are paying slightly more. However, in the longer run, this is getting offset somehow by economies of scale, which go in favor of sustainable producers.
If we look at the topic, where are we right now? What's the current status of this development? Let's say consumer information at the point of sale on sustainability.
I can give you an example on that one.
Please.
So, just for our customers, really, and the customers we've worked with. So I'm agreeing with everybody saying here about, I think that actually you can't really deliver a sustainable product unless you actually understand the supply chain as well. One of our customers is called Retraced. And what they've done is to help build their brand loyalty as well, and to enable their own customers make conscious choices. They've used our technology to actually to verify the authenticity and the responsible sourcing of handmade shoes. So they've created an application which actually lets consumers, they know exactly who made their products, from which materials, and under what conditions as well. So they've actually built their whole proposition, the heart of their brand is around sustainable information in the supply chain.
Now, I'm curious because the interesting thing is, as soon as we introduce, let's say, transparency and traceability into industries, there are some people who say, great, there you go, have a look. And others that say, no, we're not that keen on that, actually. Is this going to transform our industry significantly? Is it going to introduce new players?
Well, I think it will introduce new players. And I think, again, it goes back to the kind of the end consumer, and actually the type of consumer, and the millennials coming through, they kind of expect to be able to understand and ask those type of questions. And I said, we see it in our customers coming to us with our RFPs, asking us information about our clean cloud within Oracle. I think that people are asking those questions. And again, like I said, it's the type of consumer that are coming through who are actually demanding and expecting and sustainability. They're kind of like sustainability native with a lot of our kind of decision makers that are starting to come through. So I think it is something we'll see more of. Yeah.
Out of interest, how's this going to look like? I mean, is it going to be a price tag which just says on the back, hey, this is a perfectly sustainable product? Is it going to give us some kind of a KPI or something along those lines? Maybe there is already some kind of sort of use case we're not aware of. Maybe you can give us some updates on that.
Yeah, there is also one concept that we hear quite a lot of when it comes to sustainability in fashion, in food, in many supply chains, and it's called greenwashing. Plenty of companies are just labeling themselves as responsible, and many of those companies are actually being supported by a very quasi-legitimate certification bodies, which charge lofty sums just to award those stamps of approvals. The catch-21 here is that all those sustainability claims, all those beautiful logos are not being supported by nothing else but a narrative. There is no data with integrity behind those sustainability claims. And this is also one of the reasons why we at Origin Trail, we function as an open source community. We build tools, and those tools are also being used in kind of in complement with other legacy systems, also Oracle systems. Also, we combine our open source decentralized technologies with Oracle blockchain to ensure more proper traceability of in food supply chains, more specifically in dairy. So all these tools, technological tools, are doing something very important in supply chains. They're complementing a mere narrative brands are trying to bring forward, which oftentimes results in greenwashing. And what we try to do is complement the narrative with actual data that has integrity, that it's immutable, it cannot be tampered with. And actually anybody can, through the means of peer review, confirm that the technology behind is trustworthy.
Now, you just mentioned the greenwashing word, which is very important because it's just super popular to make a car green by putting a green sticker on it and just saying it's green. And people are like, wow, it's probably green. Now, what's a good source to go as a consumer and say, look, I want to buy the right products? Because what you just said is there's a lot of logos out there. All of them are super sustainable, super green, super whatever. Great narratives behind it, but not always the truth. Where do I need to go as a consumer to really dig deep to understand where I'm at with certain products? Is there something already?
Mm-hmm. I think there are several ways. What we see right now, there are two kind of forces. Because of this global protectionism and because of the geopolitics that are currently in play, also governments are pushing for more local sourcing. It's kind of a protectionism which does have certain kind of positive outcome. We see more of a local production, and if you have local production, it's way easier to just physically go there and understand the supply chain. However, still predominantly supply chains are global, so we need to make sure that consumers are equipped with information, with data. And we are noticing that brands are providing more data, more information for consumers to check what has transpired in supply chains. There's an important challenge, though. Even brands that are not intentionally greenwashing have a challenge to access data throughout supply chains, because supply chains are very complex, going beyond second, third tier supplier. It's very difficult. And also technological systems, IT systems are oftentimes geared towards vendor lock-ins. So you would have, I will say, company A providing an informational system, and their goal is to vendor lock-in part of the supply chain, and so on and so forth. And then there's a challenge that there is no middleware that would somehow connect all those different systems. And we need to provide that middleware. We need to provide open standards so that different parts of supply chains can rely on. So this is kind of a challenge. It's a technological challenge. It can be overcome, but there needs to be a shift in the way technological companies are working towards helping those companies, those brands. And this shift, we believe is more into a direction of co-opetition instead of competition. So coming up with open source frameworks, coming up with perhaps joint implementations, so that other act upon those joint implementation and take them as good examples of how things should be made more transparent supply chains.
I'm going to jump in here. I have the feeling that Mandeep is dying to say something. I can see you hobbling around from left to right and inhaling, and the same thing with Tanya as well. So Mandeep, you go ahead.
Yeah, no. I absolutely agree with everything you said there. It is incredibly complex, and I do think that data, we genuinely believe that data is the answer to solving this, and I think certainly technology that we have now in our ability to deal with that data is so different from even 5 years ago, which is why we've entered this space. Standardization of information, I think, is a big barrier to kind of getting there, and so I think the kind of work that you're doing is incredibly valuable. To go back to the sort of beginning of that conversation around greenwashing and sort of, what is sustainability? And when you say a product is sustainable, is that something that we can even say, or can a brand say? And I think that that's a good giveaway, right? If a brand is saying this product is sustainable, then I think that's problematic, because nothing is, it's been made out of some raw material, it's been shipped in some way, there's been some energy used. Even if you do that in a kind of an offset way, or minimize the type of resources, or you make sure that you're best in class, I think there are still resources being used. Nothing, as far as I know at this point, is completely sustainable. So that's a good place to start. I think really fluffy claims that we've generally seen, to stay away from those. I think the more concrete a brand can be, usually that's backed up by good data. So something like a footprint for its product is usually a good sign that they know where this comes from, they know what the supply chain looks like, and they have a good understanding of the impact of this product. And it may very well have a lower impact than something else, or higher. And so sustainability is a relative term, and we did a number of, like, hundreds of interviews when we started off, and I think the interesting thing that came out of that was, even between people who really care about sustainability as consumers, there's a really varying degree of their sustainability literacy. So they know and recognize some terms, but they're not really sure how that translates into impacts. They care about some big topic, let's say climate change, but they don't know how to relate that to a particular product. Does this number mean something? Oh, this footprint is X. How does that relate to everything else I'm doing? Surely the most sustainable thing is to not buy something. And so how does that work, right? And going back to the comment, I think, around, are we going to see different competitors or different kinds of players in the market? I think rental, for example, has been a really good example of a sustainable option, a more sustainable option. And sort of younger generations, certainly Gen Z, are very open to and actually prefer renting over and above buying a new product. And so we see a lot of this. Finally, I think, I'm trying to get all these points in, but like, I think my sort of final point in that is, when you have these huge organizations that don't know what's been happening in their supply chain, they're retrofitting sustainability in, and that's incredibly complicated. However, when you start a new company, maybe you're direct to consumer, sustainability is part of the core. You kind of build the supply chain to meet the needs of your consumers and to ensure that, like, to the best of your knowledge, this is being made in a way where you're not dumping chemicals. People have met certain standards that are working along the supply chain. The fabrics are kind of preferred or lower impact, and you're doing this in an optimal, low impact way. And that's something new that we're seeing, and we're probably going to see a lot more of those.
Tanya, you were inhaling earlier.
I was thinking, I've jumped around here a little bit, but I totally agree with exactly what you've saying. We've been seeing that with our different sized companies. We see that our, enterprise customers are kind of, they've got a clear vision now, they're fully aware of sustainability, they've got a vision, and they really kind of do know where to get started and how to get started. As you said, kind of the startups, I think they live and breathe sustainability, they're sustainability native. And so we see them, moving really quickly in that direction, and there's no issues there. With our mid-sized businesses, we're finding that slightly different. We're finding that, they'll maybe marketing quite a bit on their websites about it. They understand about the UN SDGs. They understand, and some of them are regularly on a yearly basis getting penalized for their carbon footprint. So they're aware of this. But again, I agree with you. They are struggling to understand where to start, how to get started, what they need to measure around sustainability and how to measure it. And that's where, I'm going to bring in Oracle here around our kind of, as a larger organization, because we're obviously not a startup, but we are, and we're designing everything within our organization with sustainability in mind, right? The cloud has given us a great catalyst to do this too. So, as we design and develop our hardware and our platform, we're thinking, we're carefully considering things such as about the energy efficiency. By 2025, we want all of our cloud data centers to be 100% renewable energy. We think about product serviceability. We think about recyclability of our hardware components. We think about upgrading. So we think about consolidating. So the cloud has given us a great platform really to address sustainability at the core of what we do at Oracle. And then I've got to mention the data, of course. So from a software side, it is really all about being able to help our customers collect that wealth of data out there, and then using the data, enable them to gather the right insights so that they can identify themselves as customers, where in that supply chain and what they need to measure, how they can measure it across the whole of the value chains, the business value chains, really. And then just one thing really about the supplier, because we obviously have suppliers as well. And something we've put to try to formalize that a little bit is we've got a kind of an Oracle supplier code of ethics and business conduct. And that requires each one of our suppliers to be able to conduct their business in an ethical and responsible manner too. So it gives us a bit of reassurance of the suppliers and how they're actually working within their own businesses.
I'm curious now, because obviously now I know you, Tanya, and I know Oracle, and I know whom to ask and how to understand that I can trust you. But imagine I'm a consumer and I want to purchase a product and I want to know, like, how are they doing and how are they not doing? Let's take a use case, and maybe the three of you can kind of help me. Imagine I want to buy a new Tesla and I want to use Dogecoin to pay for it. And I'm seeing a lot of information on the internet, people saying, it's good, it's bad, it's whatever, Elon. How can I, maybe there's a platform, maybe there's a go-to place to finally learn of the true facts behind a very emotional discussion that's currently being led. Is this company, whatever, Tesla was obviously just the first thing that came to mind. Is it a sustainable company? Do they have a sustainable supply chain? Is it okay to pay with Dogecoin or not? Like, where would I need to go to get to the bottom of this? We can also take a different example if you like, but I mean, the last week, my Twitter bubble has just been bursting with people saying Elon is a saint. The others are saying, no, he's the devil. The others saying Dogecoin will change the world. The others saying, no, it's just as bad as Bitcoin. Seriously, I have no idea. And I wouldn't even know where to go. I'm not going to buy one, by the way, just.
The question is, what is sustainability at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Is it only sustainable to provide an electric vehicle that in practice does not, create any carbon footprint at the end of the production cycle, but prior to being produced and shipped to consumers, it does leave quite a lot of negative consequences in the environment. Plus, we don't know what is happening with the people that are actually mining all the necessary components for the electric vehicle. It's not just the product, the effects on the environment, but also we need to understand that plenty of those components are coming from oftentimes rogue states being controlled by rogue regimes. And people in those mines are working in horrible conditions. And yet what we see as consumers at the end of the day when we're buying a product is something nice. It's a story that Elon told us, and it resonates well in our heads because we're happy. We love to be sustainable. And oftentimes as consumers, we don't do the mental effort to understand, is that really sustainable, because we're happy with it. This is a product. Sustainability is a product. It makes us feel happy.
But I want to jump in there. I love the answer, and it reflects exactly very often my feeling as a consumer I have, because I want to buy like sustainability as a super one-dimensional thing. Like, it's sustainable, you're good, and you pay a bit more for it, you're good. And it turns out it's not that simple. And right now you're going like, what does sustainability mean? I think like, I don't know, you tell me. And you're going, there's a lot of dimensions to it. It's a lot more complex. And what I'm kind of like, I was born in 81 and I grew up with the whole mobile revolution, and there was a lot of players in the field, and suddenly along came Apple one day and they suddenly produced like convenience first. You press a button and stuff happens and everything's nice and shiny and it's a lot less complicated than all the other stuff, and it's decluttering. And I'm quite curious, like in the sustainability world, is that the right word we're looking at? Do we have to look at different dimensions? What kind of education do we have to give our customers that they fully understand what's going on, that they can make the right calls on this? Because for me, like buying a Tesla, and people say, hey, I bought a Tesla, I'm doing something for the environment. And I go like, no, you're not. And they go, oh, yes, I am. It's green. You're like, probably not. How can we, because on the other side, we also know we have all these targets to hit until 2035 and 2050. And we see like the clothing industry where we hear like 87% of the clothing ends up in landfills and whatnot. It's crazy numbers. And then again, the level of lack of education of consumers is crazy, I would say. As an entrepreneur, I see tremendous opportunity here to solve massive problems. But is the key problem maybe not just sustainability technology, but more communication?
Yeah, sure. I think definitely communication is an opportunity. It's also a huge challenge, kind of going back to this idea of really varying degrees of sustainability literacy. And this idea, just as you said, it's like, okay, I want something that's sustainable, yes or no, but it isn't a yes or no at all. It's a maybe, or it depends, or actually much, I think better is possibly, but in relation to what? And so it's only ever more or less sustainable than something else. So maybe buying an electric car is sustainable, but only if you were going to buy a diesel. Whereas if you had a bicycle, then no. So I think it's about switching the way we think about resources. And yeah, that's a huge task.
Mm-hmm. But it's easy, right? I mean, I'm a huge fan of JFK, and JFK once said the famous moonshot where he said, we want to go fly through the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And I like people that do things not because they're easy, but because they're hard. But I mean, the topic is sustainability information should be as common as price or size, right? So we kind of agreed, yes, it should, but it's very hard to say what the actual information should be. Now, in an ideal world, the world is always an ideal world if you're an entrepreneur, what in your eyes would be certain levels of information we should give consumers that they can make a first initial understanding of their purchasing? Let's say we're at the point of sale. Let's say it's an FMCG, or you can pick it. You can pick it if you like. What would that be? Now, taking all the complications away, like regulations and whatnot. Imagine JFK comes back. JFK and Tupac come back along and say, look, we'll make this work.
There is one thing that consumers are also kind of limited by. It's the informational redundancy. Oftentimes, and when we started the whole thing 10 years ago, we thought, let's give consumers as much information as possible. And that's really not the case. There is also always that, how was it called, certain boundary beyond which one should not go when we're informing consumers. And that's why it's highly important to select. But then again, when you select information, you are in the shoes of someone who's actually dictating what kind of information gets to be seen. So it's a very difficult question. That's my point. But definitely we should take into consideration what's the bandwidth of consumers. And consumers nowadays, they have a very limited time span. I thought my generation has a limited time span. Go to TikTok and see how the people that are yet to gain and are gaining the purchasing power, the way they interact with products. It's incredible. They're lazy.
I know, but I mean, if we look at all these challenges, imagine we would have we could do whatever we like, and someone goes like magic. This could be something we could look at. I'm curious if the three of you would come up with a solution. Like if you're 12 years old and you're supposed to select the coolest car in the world, you go for horsepower, price, weight, or whatever, like 2 or 3 very simple KPIs with which you can assess it. Like 600 horsepower, mine is 700, mine goes 400 miles an hour, mine goes 300. And based on that, you already have an understanding. And what are certain KPIs we could start feeding consumers that they can make an educated guess, at least on sustainability?
Physical product is always as worthy as the informational context around that. And informational context is never provided by single company, single individual. It's always kind of a graph, a knowledge graph of data points. And the more context we add to this knowledge graph, ideally and theoretically more valuable this product is. And it's not oftentimes a single individual that would then read from that quote unquote knowledge graph. It might be several individuals, several companies. And then to make things easier for consumers, for the decision makers, we could potentially come up with certain metrics through which we measure the context and the quality of the context around the product. So that's kind of the ideal future. And this is where AI with Mandeep product comes in. Also, Oracle has products, but I guess at the end of the day, it all comes to collaboration. If we cannot somehow instill the ecosystem thinking into supply chains, we haven't done much. Also, the ship that got stuck in Suez Canal, it did not get stuck because it didn't have the most modern equipment. It got stuck because the equipment, all that fancy stuff, did not interoperate amongst each other. So this is why we need to instill the ecosystem thinking into supply chain, and then also instill co-opetition thinking, rather than let's build walls and then protect data in the walls. So
that's basically you saying it's complicated.
It's complicated because we wanted to make it. We are geared towards making it complicated. ecosystem thinking is a very simple thinking, but it does require certain mental exercise, and perhaps it goes against proprietary way of designing systems.
Mandeep, Tanya, what would you add?
I mean, I agree. I think it is complicated. That's why we can't answer it straight off with you with kind of those three magic things. I mean, I think education kind of developers and customers alike will bring the collaboration, which is what you just mentioned there, to think about those kind of things that they could do. I know for us for design, you know, we'll think of things around, you know, sustainability, like I said, in design, but being efficient, thinking of circular principles as well, and how we actually define our development, our product strategy. So I think you could come up with KPIs and, I don't know, for sourcing and manufacturing, logistics, you know, compliance, things around all those things for how you develop a product strategy. But I also think that, you know, the mindset and trust. I think trust, brand reputation, and trust is also a big thing for consumers. And I think they trust reputable brands to, you know, do what they say, you know, deliver what they say. And also they're influenced by other consumers, obviously, in their write-ups and their social and their own evaluations of things as well. So I think there's a big communication and collaboration and education thing that needs to happen. And also, you know, educating kind of developers and the likes to come up with principles in kind of product design as well. I think it's a big area to discuss.
Where do we start? Or where are we at? Because now, if we're listening and we're like, yes, we understand a lot has to be done. Let's say we were four entrepreneurs and we're saying, okay, this is where we're at. Let's create a timeline. And these are like the next easiest steps we can take in order to make the world more sustainable. What have we got so far? And what are the next crucial steps?
Well, I know we've talked about them a lot with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, right? But it's a really good start because it's, you know, every 193 plus countries are involved in this. It's kind of brought a unified language together that's common across all industries, an understanding of what they are. So it's helping for, you know, from a private sector focus, from a government sector, and to be kind of have a seat at the global kind of stage with what those industries are doing around them. So I think that is a start, right? That's been a trigger to get things started. And I know that they're looking at kind of potential unified carbon taxes with President Biden and other things that are potentially on the table as well, which will get people thinking in a different direction and coming together on it as well. So I think we've made a start with the likes of those regulations.
I'm curious, how did the 17 SDGs kind of play into this? Are they kind of like a certain guideline also for companies to say, look, we are kind of tackling SDG 3, 5, and 12?
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think that, you know, that's the idea. And, you know, countries have got kind of rankings and scorecards to say what they are doing and how they are committing to each one of those. And then they get ranked on that. But, you know, all of that links to then being able to get better funding, investment, you know, green financing to do more projects and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that's kind of the remit of the SDGs.
Mandeep, Ziga, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I touched on regulation a little bit before, and I think it's whenever we see a real kind of seismic shift in industry, it is usually driven by something like regulation, and the SDGs are recommendations and they're not binding. And so in effect, you can make a commitment towards them without actually following through in lots of ways. And I think until we do see, I think, stronger, more enforcement of regulation, actually, firstly, development of regulation around this, and then kind of real enforcement around that, I think it is going to be pretty slow in comparison. And I guess Europe, going back to your very early question, then I think it is leading in that, and that's good to see. But I think it's important that we have the SDGs, but I think they're not enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to try and summarize what we kind of talked about. You can kind of nod like so or like so, and we'll try and see what we kind of learned in the last, whatever it was, 45 minutes or something. So we tried to understand if sustainability information should be as common as price or size. And I think we all agreed, yes, totally. However, we also kind of quickly agreed that it's not that easy, because what is sustainability and where does it start? Where does it end? Sustainable for what? What's the perspective? What's the time frame? What's the product? Where is it coming from? And that is quite tricky. And I'm understanding there's still a lot of work to be done. And I understand that the 17 SDGs so far are a start, but they are not really the end point. We understood that data and traceability and also transparency are going to be key in this, education as well as also collaboration, because we're also seeing this. At the end of the day, I'm also thinking, if I kind of listen correctly between the lines, that currently the main part of the way this world is being driven is actually through the narrative. The ones who have the best narrative are the ones who are seemingly most sustainable, but that's something we need to kind of work away from and getting to more quantifying and qualifying actual parts on this. We're understanding right now that a lot of this is not really a yes or no answer, but it depends in very many shades of gray. But at the end of the day, to kind of also add my grain of salt to it, it's a very pressing issue where we see we've just got a couple of years actually to move this forward. Right now, we're seeing that a lot of this is depending on trust, and that a lot of the big brands are the ones who have trust, and a lot of the big players in this area are the
I think we lost our moderator. Daniel?
But that was a good wrap up.
Yeah, that was a good wrap up. Daniel, if at any point you come back.
Thanks, guys. Shoot,
yeah, thanks ever so much. Everybody's gone.
Everybody's gone.
I loved it.
Well, that happens if someone is a little over ambitious. I'm back again. Yeah, someone in the technical team decided, oh, it's time. Click, gone. I still have 2 minutes, boys and girls. Don't get so overexcited. So I was right in the middle of wrapping this up. Anyhow, so I was just in the middle of it saying, okay, it's not that easy. And it's probably the big brands who are the ones who are going to have to build the trust and leverage the trust they have right now. At the same time, there's a lot of space, a lot of movement, and a lot of improvement we can be doing here. The time is of the essence. It's about doing it now. And as consumers, we need to educate ourselves together with the players there. What did I miss out? Are you happy so far?
Just data. Just data is be able to gather insights and help our customers actually identify what they need to do as well.
Perfect. It's been a pleasure talking to the three of you, and I'm sorry for being popped out for the second, but then again, live is live, right? So that's all fun and games. And yeah, happy to connect with you and hopefully meet you all in person sooner or later. In that sense, thank you very much for joining us. Take care, stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you all later. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for inviting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.